All right then. The meeting of the Public Safety Committee is now called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Arnowitz.
Here.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderman Kotar.
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
8 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll first take up Board Bill 124. We will not be hearing 97, correct? That's your...
Yeah.
We're holding on to 97 today. Alderman Bosley, you're not a member of the committee, so we'll take your board bill up first. That'd be Board Bill 124.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Good
How
morning.
y'all doing this morning? Thank you for hearing my bill.
You need to see it?
Yes, sir, please. I mean, I know it, but it's good to have it.
It was good to have it in front of you.
This bill is basically, well, of course, we got a lot of liquor stores here and on the north side. The third ward, we got enough at the same time also. As growing up, I saw a lot of alcohol everywhere. And, you know, you can drink before you can find somewhere nice to eat, and that's an issue. So with that, we are going to stop anyone from getting or obtaining or applying for a liquor license in the third ward unless you want to have a restaurant and consume on premises, period. We just want to promote something other than liquor stores, period, and get more restaurants.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Alderman Boyd?
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, why a period of 5 years which exceeds your time in office?
It gives the person coming in, if it is not me, a chance to kind of look at what's been done over the last 4 years. I think sometimes it takes more than a few years for you to really see an impact on particular things, and we don't plan ahead a lot of times. If we plan for changes, we can actually plan to see what effects those changes have made, and that alderman can come in, they can either repeal or can see that this has done some good, and, you know, they have some time to kind of look at and see where things are when they get in.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Alderman Vaccaro? Alderman Arnowitz?
No questions, Alderman.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
Just one quick question. Of course, I support you in anything you want to do in your ward, but I just wanted some clarification on it. So you won't be issuing any new liquor license unless they're selling food?
Right. You have to have a full restaurant, or well, it's a clause for non-for-profits at the same time, but we won't be approving anything unless you are promoting having a restaurant or within an entertainment district, which is what I'd also would like to bring to the ward at some point in time. We're done with liquor stores. We're done with packaged liquor. You can get it from anywhere. So unless you want to come bring a place where families can come and eat and enjoy themselves, and, you know, maybe we can have a cocktail or, you know, a drink afterwards at the table, you won't be able to buy alcohol in our ward from a new
You know how
place.
some of these businesses, they pop up, they have the liquor store, but then they're selling the hot food in one section of the store. Is that something you're open to as well, or not?
No, ma'am. They will have to consume the alcohol on the premises.
Okay.
You won't be able to leave with it, so it won't be any packaged alcohol at all. So, you know, if they got a full-scale kitchen on one side and a gas station on the other side, they still have to, if you're going to have alcohol, it has to be consumed on premises. And, I mean, it doesn't fit within, I guess, the idea of where we're going with this. Then the community will most certainly be there at every hearing to make sure it goes in the direction we would like it to be.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Alderman Coulter?
No questions.
Alderman Muhammad?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No questions.
Okay. Alderman,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alderman Bosley.
problem,
For
sir.
some reason, I feel like this is deja vu. Didn't we do a bill like this for you already?
Yes, sir, we did. So when we did the first one, we repealed the wrong ordinance, so we had to come back and
Okay.
kind of do an R&R, repeal and replace.
I'm getting kind of old. I'm over 50, so but for some reason, I had this deja vu moment.
It was not a dream. It was real. But,
are there any other questions from members of the committee? If not, any closing remarks?
thank you. No, sir, I just will appreciate if you all will approve this, and I recommend that we pass it out of committee.
Okay, then.
Make a motion, if I can, that we pass
Go right ahead.
Board Bill
Open for a motion.
We pass Board Bill 142, 124 out with a due pass recommendation.
Been moved and seconded that we pass Board Bill 124 out with a due pass recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? If not, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderman Cone, Alderman Arnowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Kotar,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer, excuse, Alderman Muhammad, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Chairman Kennedy.
Aye.
8 aye votes.
By your vote, we sustain the motion of the Alderman. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
We'll now take up Board Bill 125. Alderwoman Boyd.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm asking the committee to please support my bill, number 125, in regards to restriction of liquor within my community. And we're trying to stop the selling of liquor, packaged liquor within our community also, as the previous alderman has spoke on.
Thank you. Any questions? Alderman Vaccaro, any questions? Alderman Arnowitz?
No.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
No question.
Alderman Kotar?
No questions.
Alderman Muhammad? No questions. And Alderman Boyd's over there. Okay, then. So no questions, we recognize you to close. Any closing remarks?
Yes, sir, I appreciate your support on this bill.
Okay, we can entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we pass Board Bill number 125 out with a due pass recommendation.
Been moved and,
Roll.
it's been moved and seconded that we pass out Board Bill 125 with a due pass recommendation. There's been 2 requests for previous roll.
We did,
There's no objections to previous roll. And by your vote, we've sustained the motion of the Alderman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are also, what's your Board Bill number? Board Bill 119 is also going to be held in committee today. However, I am asking the sponsor to step forward and just say a few words about it, but we're not taking a vote, we're holding it in committee, unless you don't feel the need to do so right now. Okay. Then we're going to hold Board Bill 119 and just hold it in committee right now. There'll be no statements from the sponsor. We will now pick up Board Bill 128.
So, Board Bill 128, last time we were going to add something, so now we have Board Bill 128, committee substitute. I'd like to put that in front of us if we could. And it's on everybody's desk. There's a committee sub to 128.
We get this, committee sub?
Yes. I'm sorry, what's that? Let me come
Yeah,
around.
come
because-
around.
Did we even get this?
Understand the committee sub was not supposed to be 25. That was in the
We thought that was.
So it's for the chairman and the committee.
Where's he from?
committee, all committee members got it.
Right.
They all,
They have it now, but you received it 4 hours ago.
Okay, all right. Mr.
is
Rosen.
it okay? So is it okay then if we're fine with going with committee substitute for 128?
Yeah, we can put it before us.
Okay, I'd like to put that before us then.
Yeah, it's a motion to discuss committee substitute for Board Bill 128.
Yes.
Who's offering the motion?
So moved.
I was going to say, I'd make a
Alderman
motion.
Boyd, seconded by Alderman Ornowitz.
Wanna vote?
You requesting previous role? What do you want to call it?
Previous roll.
I can yeah, I'm on the committee, I'll say previous
Yes.
role.
Previous role has been requested. Is there any opposition to previous role? Seeing none by your vote, we've adopted the motion.
Okay. The only thing really different in this is on page 4, line 4, and it's section 8. So the only difference now is, along with all the other commission members we had talked about, the mental health and all the different ones, and I'll have Lou probably explain the structure, this will add someone who's been incarcerated to that committee. So it just lends one more voice. And anywhere else, it just, where appropriate through the different pages, it just adds that it adds a member, someone who's been incarcerated.
Okay.
So, and that's the only change to the, and then if I could, if the attorney will come up, he can better explain the structure, how it's set up, and why it's set up the way we did it. So he can better explain why we set it up and why we chose different categories for the commission.
All right, Mr. Chairman, at the request at the last meeting, what was added to this board for oversight was a additional member who has previously been incarcerated.
Yeah, I told him that.
So that is at page 4, beginning at line 4.
We told him that already.
All right, and then the remainder of the changes that are in the bill include that position, that member in reference to the other required experienced members.
We told him that.
Okay,
I was
so
just
what's the
wanting to go
question?
back, I wanted to go back through the structure of the 2 years, 4-year term, the actual structure of it, so that everybody understands what the structure is, and I know.
So you're talking about the composition structure?
Right, the composition
Okay.
structure of the.
So the initial members would be appointed for staggered terms, and then following their tenure on the board, thereafter, members would be appointed for full 4-year terms.
And just to break it down again, we have someone that's got a psychiatric background, someone that's been to prison. What are all the different, and I'm sorry, I should know
There are
this.
there are members of the board, there are different members of the board that are required to have specific experience. One member of the board has to have a mental or behavioral health professional, another one a medical professional, a corrections professional, a social work professional, and then finally a previously incarcerated person on the board.
And my hopes in all this is, this is just one step up from the board bill we did last year, is that we start to get a better understanding of how we deal with these different issues. And it seems like some people go to jail that, in my opinion, I mean, they create a crime, I guess they should go to jail. But I still think that, what brought my attention to all this was still the lady with the salt shaker that started out at the Cardinals that apparently got more involved, and then she ended up going to the workhouse. Her family said she needs medication, and they said, well, we don't let you bring your own medication in. And eventually she hung herself, which we've had a few people kill themselves. But it seems like when I talk to them, when I talk to, to the people over at the jail, they said, oh, well, she hung herself for a lot of other reasons. She was depressed with her dad. But a lot of people kill themselves and commit suicide. But we need to get to why that's happening and what can we do to prevent it, whatever the reason was. And so it's my hope, and I know Dale Glass here is to speak on it, but it's my hope that we continue to move forward, and I'll probably have another board bill after this one, but I want to move forward, that we're protecting people that are in our custody, and that we're doing the best job we can to make sure that their stay with us is something that maybe we can help them along the way. I know there's a lot of programs, but I think it holds them somewhat accountable. I'd like to see this group come back and report to us fairly regularly, let us know, so that we can make the proper corrections to the jail system, at least what I believe to help the jail system. So that's pretty much my spiel. And I'm open to questions, or did you want to bring Dale up first?
I believe we'll bring the commissioner up.
Okay.
Commissioner Dale Glass has some comments on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. And also, good morning to the committee.
Good morning.
I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on the topic. But before I do, I would be remiss if I didn't at least point out that we should be cautious talking about a particular issue that is currently in litigation, and also we may be in danger of violating HIPAA. Even if we don't put a name to the subject, there's enough information there to identify who that subject is, and HIPAA protects any medical information, just as I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that to the committee. I rise in support, actually, of this particular bill. I'm simply wanting to address the committee to ask for some consideration and some alterations in what's in it. I wish, or at least I will extend again, which I did last time when we had a bill, the Division of Correction is there to assist, if you need our assistance, in looking at various issues concerning corrections, and help, if it's needed or desired, to frame various things that this committee would like to see in place. And I appreciate the fact that the committee is interested in what corrections is doing. I think that you will find, even with this bill, as you did with the previous, that we at least meet or exceed those requirements and expectations. The last bill was written on a bill that, or a rule that was in New York, and a lot of that information didn't apply, because we have different jails, different states have different issues. If you look at the monthly report that we put online for the public to see, a lot of those areas say 0. A good example, ACA standards talks about how long you house someone in disciplinary segregation. ACA was here a couple of months ago. They taught a class about the effects of...
I'm sorry, Commissioner, what's 8A?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We start using acronyms. Some of us are not familiar with that
Sure.
terminology.
American Corrections Association.
Okay, thank you.
They kind of set the standards for how jails and prisons are run. I provided the chairman with a copy of their latest edition of some of the rules at one point. But at any rate, they had a class about the effects of long-term disciplinary incarceration. And some of my members came back to me and said, we see what you're trying to accomplish. They say 30 days, 60 days. I don't allow more than 10. And then I have things in place during that process that they can do. You'll find the same thing happens with this. One of the things I would have offered on this bill is that, and maybe Alderman Vicario is familiar, but there exist already statutes that address this issue in terms of visits and tours to the jail. If you look at RSMO 221.300, it has the grand jury is required to visit jails. In 221.310, humane treatment of prisoners. And then 221.320, Board of Visitors, which is much like the committee that you're wanting to develop. And that doesn't prevent, obviously, the committee to wanting to have its own committee, and that's fine. But I would ask that when you look at qualifications, Section 2, one of the things I think that would be useful, and I would ask that you would consider adding, is that individual or those individuals go through training for corrections volunteers. That will give them some of the do's and don'ts and take care of liability issues and security cautions as well. It'll also qualify them to obtain an ID and enter the jail without escort anytime they want to. So I would appreciate if you consider that. And then this is just me being overcautious. When you're looking at selecting members for the board, I wish you would consider looking at advocacy groups, because I have found over the years that sometimes a person's particular agenda will not match up in giving or producing a favorable report, even if it may be appropriate to do so. So just consider that. Also in Section 2, it talks about removal of members, and it has a clause that says, it says good cause. One of the things I think that, or two things I think that fall into good cause, it would be, or perhaps should be considered, would be violation of institutional rules as it relates to safety and security. So if a member is in violation of those rules, I would like to be able to bring that information to the committee for consideration. The other thing that, and they'll learn about these issues if they go through the volunteer training, the other thing is staff-inmate relations. That's an issue that is always of concern in jails. So those things I would like the committee to consider for good cause if you're looking at removing an individual. In Section 3, I know that that's a section that deals with complaints. There are a number of ways that the Division of Corrections receives complaints. I don't know what you have in mind, what kind of complaints or how you want to address those, but I just want to say that there is a official process in place for inmate complaints. It starts off with a informal resolution, and most of the complaints that we have are on that level where they're resolved simply by telling us, hey, this is going on, will you look at it, I don't think it's fair, or something like that. That's the majority of the complaints we get. Then if that is not satisfied, or the person submitting it is not satisfied, then it goes to the actual grievance stage. The grievance also has an appeal stage that actually comes to me. If they're still not satisfied with that remedy, then they are allowed to proceed in court. They can't proceed in court until they go through those steps. So that is already in place and part of the process. So when you're looking at complaints, just keep in mind that there is this parallel process that I must abide by. The other thing that I would only indicate is that the reason I support this is because I want the committee to know what good work we are doing in the jail. And we have been making a lot of progress in the last 5 years. In the last 2 weeks, on I think the 18th of October, we actually put on a play at the jail so that the residents could have a look and discussion about what happens in real life in the city of St. Louis, some of the challenges and how people deal with them, outcomes and things like that. We had 150 inmates that attended that play, another half a dozen that actually made all the surrounding displays for the play. I can't think of the right word I wanted to say. But also then we had like 50 visitors and guests at that play, to include state reps, people from the Board of Aldermen, and a lot of our volunteers. We've also had a health day where you don't have to sign up to see sick call, but you just come in and we do biometrics, and that was attended by more than 200 inmates, volunteers of St. Louis U. On the 18th, we had a graduation. We call it our bridging ceremony, where we have life skills, training for the women. And actually, we probably, I don't know if it's still true, but at the time we started, we were probably the first in the country that actually has an occupational therapist working with our reentry group. So not only do we develop programs for a group, but then we break it down for the individual and see what their needs are. And then we have another occupational therapist working in the community that makes those connections before they're released. So they have a plan already in place, and then they're bridged to the community where they've already been in contact with those same providers. They will continue their plan. One of the young ladies actually was released before they graduated, requested permission to come back to jail so they could be part of the graduation, which is not very common. but the second time it's happened in the city of St. Louis. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing that I really want this committee to know about. And since I've seen the interest, I just want you to know that our approach is one of respect for the individual. Guilty, not guilty, respect. And that they are treated with that respect. And anytime someone can't live up to those standards, I hold them accountable. So if this and the previous bill will help the committee to know that, I support it. I just say that when you get ready to do this, speak with us, and we'll be glad to open our doors, let you see what's there, and what might apply, what might not, because we're not the same as other states or jails. Thank you.
Oh, but please remain, in
Oh,
case.
sure.
So we will take up any questions from members of the committee related to the bill. This testimony, Alderman Boyd.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think you're doing a good job over at the jail under the circumstances. And I appreciate your recommendations. They seem to be very practical and fair, and I hope that the committee take you up on those recommendations to be added to the bill to make it a better bill. I have a quick question about how you keep track of data. Do you have real-time information on the statistics of the inmates in jail? For example, if you wanted to know how many was women, how many were men, how many had been there 2 or 3 times before?
Well, I hesitate when you say real time. I do, if you look at the website, I do publish each month those kind of statistics. For example, for the month of September, black males 1,071, white males 165, black females 60, white females 40. So that information is there. One of the big challenges that I have that we're trying to address is our computer system and software, inmate jail management system, is pretty outdated. And right now, a matter of fact, I'm working on a project with Vera Institute out of New York to be able to examine and look at my population and see who's there and what's going on. But it's difficult. We don't have the ability to do those kind of reports. And often I have to actually pay for a developer to write a software to get the information. I mentioned once before that I was working on a program that would allow me to bring data and statistics to the Board of Aldermen, so when they're planning to do various things in their community or what is the need, I'll be able to provide that for them. For example, at one point I shared with the police and fire department about zip codes that had K2 issues. And we might look at where are educational needs, where are employment needs, just by looking at that data. So that's our goal, and we're working on that now. In fact, my team meets with Regis, who's responsible or the overseer of that project, meet with them weekly to try to develop those various things.
Okay, so back to the original intent of my question. So if I wanted to know how many times Johnny Jones, that's currently in your population, has been to MSI, can you get that data? Is that data somewhere else?
I could get the data, but it would be a long, drawn-out process
Okay.
that was basically manual.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Alderman Cone.
So as it pertains to this board bill, I'm just curious, in here it says that this commission should hear any complaints or I guess recommendations even, but complaints mostly patterns or issues of systemic concern, which I would kind of throw maybe into, if someone has a recommendation or an idea in terms of how to address a systemic concern, that this commission would hear that. How many complaints do you all receive every year from either inmates or their relatives? Is that something that you currently track?
Well, I don't track that. We get comments, complaints, or information from the Citizens Bureau, the Mayor's Office, Director of Public Safety, phone call from a family member. That's not unusual. I don't track it. But if I look at formal issues, I don't know how many informal resolutions I get, but formal grievances, less than 5 a year.
What do you consider a formal grievance? Is that something that's in writing, or is that something that has to come through the mayor's office? What is considered a formal grievance?
No, actually, it's a stage of that grievance or complaint process. All complaints start off as informal resolution requests. And so the individual inmate will say, I've been treated unfairly, this is what has happened. Could be the food portion or anything, or seeing the doctor. And so we investigate that issue, find out what's going on, and come up with a resolution. If there's no issue, we say, we find no issue here. If there is one, we found this issue, this is what we're going to do about it. Then the inmates determine if they're satisfied with the results. If they are not, then they go to the grievance stage. It's kicked up to higher up in my administration. They look at the issue, do whatever research, the inmate rebuttals. And if they're not satisfied at that stage, then it becomes a grievance appeal that comes to me. And then I review it. And if they're still not satisfied with what I say or what I conclude, then that gives them access to the courts and the legal system.
So we have no mechanism by which we are tracking even the formal grievances that come to you?
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do?
We track both the informal and the formal. I don't know the informal off the top of my head. Those are a little more frequent, but not many, based on my experience working in corrections. But the actual grievance, the ones that get to the grievance stage, are less than 5 a year.
So if you're tracking that, is there a way that you would be able to provide that information to this committee?
I can.
I would be curious just to know what types of, particularly of the informal, if there's, a more regular, complaint that's coming in,
Sure.
What we could do, or, how we could examine that to, improve the conditions over there, specific to that type of complaint. But so what I'm hearing from you is that we do currently have in place some sort of grievance or complaint related process to address the concerns of the inmates and their families as those complaints are brought to your attention.
That is correct. And we do track it by type and all of that.
And we are tracking it?
Yes.
Okay. So now, do you all track the resolutions of those as well?
Yes, that's part of the process. It's actually in our jail management system, and there are different categories. It gives us a number based on the complaint, deadlines when they have to be responded to, and what those responses are.
So if you all have this process in place already, I guess my question is, how would you envision this advisory commission accepting complaints, addressing those complaints, partnering with you on those? I mean, is that something that you've had time to think about even?
Yes, I have thought about it, and I guess I'm a little bit concerned about the issue. That's why I made the statement that we can deal with that as long as it doesn't impede the formal process, the official process that we have, because that official process is not unique to city jail. It's in all the jails and prisons across this country. And that's how an inmate actually gains access to the court, through that specific process. However, as I mentioned, the reason I'm not overly concerned, and if that's what the committee wants to do, that's fine, is because, as I indicated, I get complaints from all over, and I address every one of them. A person's attorney will call and say, my client is complaining because they haven't heard back and no one's doing anything. My reaction is call the medical department, have that person seen that day, and find out if they have any issues and address it. So I get those all the time. I get family members calling. My loved one hasn't seen their caseworker. Call the unit manager, say, go see this person, see what their issues are. That's normal. And I guess I put this committee in that same category those are normal issues that they'll ask about. And I can honestly say a lot of them pan out to nothing. I always tell my staff that it's not a problem, and I'm not going to get upset if someone complains. I just don't want it to be true. And so that's how we operate. And if there's something that's worthy of or needs to be addressed, we address it. But every complaint needs to be checked, whether it's real or not.
So if I were an inmate, at MSI and, I had a complaint about, bathroom conditions or what have you, I would complain to a CO, and then it's incumbent on that CO to follow up with the inmate, or is there someone separate from the regular kind of day-to-day interactions at the facility that's following up on these concerns? Is there a supervisor or someone like that outside of the chain of command that an inmate could go to directly versus just asking a CO? Just trying to understand, because I mean, if someone is expressing something to a CO and the CO isn't, for whatever reason, may not have reported it to their chain of command, are you kind of following my logic?
Sure,
I mean, if
sure.
there's something.
Yeah,
So, I mean, is there another party that an inmate has available to them at the facility, where it's maybe not yourself or someone in the chain of command, but someone that's on site? You mentioned the counselor, I believe, I'm forgetting, the caseworker that's there. I mean, is that someone who would handle these as well?
Sure. I appreciate your example because during the normal course of business, an inmate will go to an officer and say, good example, the bathroom's dirty. That's usually resolved without a complaint. The bathroom is cleaned. We've got workers that are paid to keep the place clean. Of course, we require inmates to clean up after themselves, but nonetheless. But if they're not satisfied with that, they submit in writing a formal complaint. And actually, I'm getting ready to make that a digital submission, but nonetheless, they submit in writing, and we have a person that their job is to investigate all those complaints. That's the first step of the informal resolution process. And that person that's their assignment.
So is it required that all complaints are made in writing?
Well, no, there's no requirement that it be in writing. If it's just a complaint like you indicate, it's usually resolved immediately and there's no need to write anything.
Okay.
And if they want to file an official complaint, that's in writing. If the individual can't write, the caseworker writes it. But yes, it's in writing, so it's documented and it's entered into the inmate jail management system so that it's recorded and then it's responded to in the timeframes that are required.
Just out of curiosity, do we by chance know what the literacy rate is within our facilities or for our prison population?
I don't have that information readily available. We do, from time to time, take a look at educational levels. But again, because our computer software is antiquated, and we have to do that manually. Okay. So it's not something that we do on a regular basis.
Mr. Chairman, may I also inquire of the sponsor?
You can.
Alderman, I am, curious. I heard your kind of impetus for wanting something, your reasoning for this, but can you explain to me what your desire, your end goal is with this, what you would hope to have happen
The
from this?
The end goal would be to make things better. Now, just in response somewhat to what we're talking about, this is something we keep bringing up over and over, whether it's been the police. They say, well, the police are investigating themselves. How could that be? So to say that, gee, you know what, if we're going to investigate ourselves as a jail, how do we know it's going to be fair? Where if we're getting outside eyes looking at it, I think you might find more people complaining. I'm certainly not going to complain, especially when I hear the stories about, and true or not true, I don't know, but inmates telling me that they're being beat up, where there was a guy that was killed and 65 people didn't see a thing. When I had spoken to the director about some of the people that are abused that, maybe are not as strong as others, his answer, whether they're sexually abused or whatever, was, well, that happens. So at some point, and then who are you going to make the complaint to? I mean, this simply puts a set of outside eyes. It gives a independent look. I mean, this committee being made up with someone that's been in the prison, a social worker. Maybe at the end of this, my goal's always been that we should have a part across the street not at the workhouse, but at the across the street there, at the Justice Center, that maybe one of the floors could be a mental health floor. I mean, this is all trying to go to a goal. This bill isn't an end-all, do-all. It's just another one in a series of bills, that are there real problems? I don't know. I went in there and the lunch looked good enough for me to eat. My goal in this, just like all the other bills that we've made through here, are to have an outside, we make commissions all the time, it's to have an outside look and get an independent look of citizens that could come back to us to tell us, maybe all this isn't true, maybe it's not true, but my goal is to try to figure out how can we make things better, and hopefully how we keep people out of jail, keep people from having to come back. I mean, some of these guys are repeat. They're back quite a few times, but that's my end goal. It's not, I would be hesitant if I was going to school somewhere and I wanted to make a complaint against the principal. I don't think it would go well, and it would probably go through the school, or in this case, the jail, that this guy's a troublemaker. He complains all the time, but that's my goal, a set of outside eyes just to look at it.
So I guess as a follow-up to that then, when we have established commissions before in the past, such as the Civilian Oversight Board, there's actually been, or CREA, the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency, we've assigned a budget to those entities so that because both of those commissions in particular are complaint-driven commissions, by and large, but they've had a staff that's associated with them and a budget, and I don't see that in this board bill. Is that something that you...
Right, because I'm looking for volunteers, and if later in life we decide that the commission could be paid or whatever, that's a different story. But right now, I would hope that we can get people to come on board. At one point in this, I wanted to actually put in a place for an attorney to work with these different boards, and that could be coming up on another board bill. Right now, this just establishes a committee. That's why there's no fiscal note with it.
My concern, though, is if we don't have staff that's associated with this or a departmental budget, that these complaints aren't going to go anywhere, and it just creates a situation where people are raising concerns and there's not follow-up coming through that commission back to whomever is following up,
Well, I would hope
filing
that,
a complaint.
and like I said earlier, what I would like to do is for the commission to come back to the Public Safety Committee so that we can learn from that, so that we can figure a way to help move the system forward and be more humane in what we do.
But if they come back and say that they need staff, they're already going to be a year into this before we're able to allocate funds over to them through a new budget process, unless there's already, and I'm going to use the COB as an example, but that took many years to get into place. And when we went through, and when Chairman Kennedy went through the process of putting the board bill together, that took a significant amount of time to determine where the budget resources were going to come from in order to support a department of one or two, basically. And I view that, and I commend you for this. I think it's a good idea. But I just, I would want to make sure that whatever complaints are coming before this commission are actually going to have the resources to be resolved and responded to, more importantly, because I don't think it does any good, for a volunteer commission to not have any support. And the way the city shows support for that is by putting a budget with it.
This budget year's already been put in place, so this would put this out until the whole next budget year. So I say we pass it, we get it through, we start developing the committee, and then we can always add to it. Again, these are, as I said at the very beginning, these are a series of bills. The only thing I agree with Mr. Glass is that somehow they go through a training program, and that part I agree with, and that certainly should be put in the bill, but the other things are minimum standards that he was quoting are nothing but minimum standards. Like I say, the only thing I agree with is that the people that would be on that commission should go through some sort of training that would allow them to freely go in and out of the jail, which he said earlier. And that would be the only amendment that I would be wanting to make to this, but, I think it's important, and I think we need to move forward with this.
Did you have any other questions, Alderman?
That's all the questions that I have at this point in time. Thank you.
Alderman Arnowitz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I think I want to say this. I think if the complaints were as horrible as a lot of people are making them out to be, and they don't seemingly get done with an answer, I think a lot of us would hear about that and probably call for your head on a platter. I think you've done a great job under the conditions you have. And I don't know if we just keep, and I understand what you said, that you would be open to it, wouldn't have a problem as long as this, but it kind of sounds like we're layering and layering and layering government. So, and I know probably a lot of complaints is medicine, food, and things like you said, but you do have a staff, we do have nurses or healthcare people that's there usually every day, and there's a way if someone gets locked up, a family member or attorney knows they're on medicine, can make that phone call, get in touch where they can get their meds when they need it.
Yes, that's true, 24 hours a day, and not only that, both facilities are nationally certified. So, yes, and there are time requirements when a person's issues must be addressed, time requirements from the day they're arrested, from the moment they're arrested and put in that car to when they're seen by medical, and we meet all of those.
Yeah. And my other thing is, from what I understand and read, there's a lot of people that is actually still down at MSI only because they don't have the money to pay fines and/or things like that. So they're still down there, and don't have a chance of getting released to the actually, which I know that's not you, that's the courts. But that's what it sounds like. We have a lot of people down there that's really just down because they don't have the money to pay fines.
Well, the topic is one that's dear to me. In the United States, we incarcerate about 25% of our population. Other Western civilizations, it's more like 5%. And so I think that it's significant or important that we look at that issue. Division of Corrections in 2012 had a population of about over 1,900. Today, we're around 1,138. And that's, I believe, partly due to some of the programs and issues and approach that we take with reentry. Of course, there are other outside entities that impact the number of people in jail, but we don't beat people. We don't allow people to fight. If I said it occurred, that's a true statement, but that doesn't mean I ignore it, not at all. People are treated with respect. I've dedicated 40 years of my life to making sure they are. So that's my position.
And again, I mean, to me personally, I think you've done a good job as long as you've been here of what you've had to work with. So, and, you know, the alderman from the 25th brings up a good point that we really already have a commission that gets funded to look into different things, and I get where the alderman from the 23rd is going to, but I mean, just sometimes I think we just have to stop putting layers over layers of government and just get it right with one layer to do whatever we're going to do. But I do appreciate your time, so thank you very much.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some concerns. Well, basically, a lot of my colleagues have already expressed some of those concerns, but I guess I'm just wondering if there is data or a high incidence of complaints that would substantiate us having this type of overlay. And I guess that's a question for the sponsor.
So,
Have you heard
There-
something
there's-
that we haven't heard? I guess that's the
well,
question.
how many people have died in our prison, in our jail? At least 4 or 5 in the last, 6 months or so. There's more people that are dying in our jail, and every time I ask, it gets stonewalled. Well, we're going to get back to you with an answer. So there's issues in there. I mean, people that have come out that have talked to me, people that say that some of the guards are basically having some of the inmates fight with each other and taking bets on it. I mean, I hear all these things. And again, when my question came up, well, what about the people that say they're being sexually abused and that? And the answer was, well, the weaker people get taken advantage of. I don't think it's acceptable. I think if you were in their jail and you got beaten up or killed or whatever, or sexually abused or whatever, then the answer is, well, yeah, but the weaker people don't, you know. I think an outside set of eyes keep you in check. I think that if it does nothing else, it lets the people running the jail know that there are at least an outside set of eyes looking. And I do hear from these people because they call me because I think they figure that I'm a sympathetic ear. And so, I mean, I do get calls from people that say they've made complaints and had that they're not being taken care of. Now, when we went on the tour of the jail, would I say that stuff that I was told I didn't see? Then I'm being told, well, we were only brought in certain sections, and, I just feel it's important, and that's why I'm doing that.
Thank you for your response on that. I guess I'm glad that I don't get a lot of those calls. But I can tell you this, you have to be watchful of some of those boogeyman stories. Jail is a bad place, but I've worked at a level 4 prison, and all the rape and stuff you see on TV, that a lot of that stuff doesn't happen. But like I said, I'm always in support of additional oversight, but I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I want to make sure that if we're going to do something, we actually structure it in a way to where it can be beneficial to the people that we're trying to protect.
Right, and
I trust that the level of professionalism is pretty high in our jails, because like I said, we would hear about it. Of course, you're going to have some situations that just occur, but I think what we have, it's probably working, but some additional oversight may be good, but I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing and we're putting the proper things in place to make it, function. To structure a committee or whatever, and like you said, with no support staff or no means or no structure to actually make sure that it's productive, then it's just kind of wasting our time. And I know you put a lot of time into it, and I know, like you said, of course, we're strapped as a city as far as funding, but I think if we do something, we just need to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
the only one change to the bill that I agree with is that they would go through some sort of training along through the jail system. So, I mean, I'm willing to hold this and make that change, but, so some sort of training, but, I'd still like to bring this back again next week and get this passed through, because, again, I still say that,
We have other members with questions. Are you completed, Alderwoman?
No further questions.
Alderman Coulter?
No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Boyd?
Me?
Any questions?
Oh, yes. I have comments and questions. I did tour over there, and I went to every piece of the jail. It was surprising, I put it that way. It was real interesting to see how they have encouraged the inmates to use their talents and their frustrations in a positive way. I mean, I even witnessed an incident where an inmate had thrown food at some of the workers, and the supervisor reacted immediately and took a hold of the situation, and they corrected it. And I hear a lot of people tell me constantly, they're in jail. They're in jail. They're there for a reason. And so we need to be clear about that. But my question that I have is, I did some research, and I thought, and this is for Mr. Glass, don't we already have a commission like this?
Well, as I indicated, there are statutes, state statutes that address these very issues. The one that I am aware of is that the grand jury does a tour and report to the courts. I'm not sure, or I'm not aware of the court, all these statutes are addressed to the court. I'm not sure if the court has a committee. So I guess the answer to that would be probably no.
Okay, because I had read somewhere with, just what's here is what I saw that they had, but it was my understanding they weren't enforced. And so it's like we're kind of double dipping ourselves. You know, we're saying we need a committee, but we already had, there's something already listed that said we should have a committee.
That's correct. That's the statute I referred to.
Right, okay, that's what I thought, because I was like, now I know I saw that.
It's called a board of visitors.
Right. And then the other question that I have, again, as the city is strapped financially, and I do know that you have an officer that's taking those complaints and that you following your procedure.
Yes.
So you don't legally have a staff in place to do that.
Not legally. I actually took one of my officers at both facilities offline, and that's their project.
Right. And so I asked this when we went on a tour, what's the ratio of officers that you have to prisoners?
So that question is an interesting one to try to answer, but basically if I look at how many people are on a shift at a time, we have about 20 officers on the shift, for example, at MSI, and there's 700 inmates.
Okay. I want to applaud you also because I did go through the facility. I even saw what you all were dealing with your dish machine, which people had talked about the conditions, and I saw why. And for me working in that field, I know what you dealt with because the machine was so old, it caused the issues. So you all handled that situation. You all have a challenge on your hand because we even went to the lockdown unit, and to see the supervisor interact with those young men at the time and knowing that they were having some issues, he stood there and listened. Mr. Corson listened to him. And so a lot of those inmates, that's what they look for. They look for somebody to listen. I understand why Alderman Pecori is doing this, but I just feel that we need to look at it as a committee on how we can support you more to get things what you need done to make things up to the 21st century.
May I comment?
Yes.
You know, so the thing that I need most would be resources in terms of trying to fix infrastructure and those kind of issues. Those are my concern. So the dishwasher, we're buying a new one.
Right.
Because of the contract that I put in place when that was renewed, I included a maintenance fund. So without having to come back to the Board of Alderman Ways and Means, we have the money to do that, and that's what we're doing. So I would indicate that if this committee dispels all those stories about people being beat up and paying people to fight, bring it. Because you're going to see that you have a good product, professionals.
I believe Alderwoman Davis, that was our last committee member.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, I went out of my way to be here today, and I did that because I support you in the work that you've done thus far, and I put all blame on infrastructure, on our system and our budgeting process, and our inability to be able to put the appropriate funds there for you. But when it comes to the professional operation that you are running, I know that you are running the best. I know that you brought in Jeffrey Carson, who is one of the top managers in the country. Both of you have professional backgrounds that go from the federal level down to local levels of supervising these types of systems. Aside from that, one of the things that you did first was you all made sure that every employee got professional development, because there were things that you saw immediately that were lacking in the ability to manage people. That was very important to me. So I pay attention to what I know to be facts, not to what I hear rumors that are out here to create situations. So the next thing I want to talk about is the fact that inside this system, we now have more opportunities for inmates to not only look within themselves to develop a better person, but also to look at the resources that are available to them while they're there and when they get out, so that they don't have to return. So above and beyond anything else, when you just talk about simple things that make a difference in how a person lives from day to day, the opportunities they have to have real conversations, the opportunities that they have to meditate, take yoga classes, get their GED, working with Slate to look at opportunities for employment when they get out, and or any training or classes they can take while they're in there. The system that is set up with St. Louis University, where while you're there, you can be taking coursework towards an associate degree free of charge. And along with that comes a social worker who works with you, family situations, and preparing you for how you continue your education and how you move forward with your life goals when you get out. Then the other part of that, too, is the fact that most people who have never been a part of Department of Social Services and or Department of Corrections operation, you would not know all the levels of accountability that are already there from the federal and state level. The state level is incredible. When it gets to us, we know nothing. Let me remind you on that. We know nothing. All we do is pay the bills. So at the end of the day, all those reports that are required by you on the state level are mandatory, not maybe if, they're mandatory. And then we look at the fact that you have also made sure that you're a part of the community, you and Mr. Carson and others. You have other staff members. They brought all kinds of new resources inside the prison to make it more humane, number one, giving opportunities to show the skills that those inmates have there, and then connect them with those resources so that they can use those skills when they get out. I applaud you for that. A couple of weeks ago when I was there that night, when we brought the play in for them, everybody thought that was ridiculous, but you didn't. You said, I can make this happen. I can bring a live play inside this medium security, and we will not have any problems. We will have inmates participate in preparing the set and everything else, and preparing a reception. They were so proud. They were so proud. I saw that firsthand. I saw so many people and talked to so many people, and they all know me. They know me from the streets. So if there was somebody suffering, or if there was somebody had some complaints, they would have told me. But aside from that, everybody has my cell phone number, so I would know about it. And then I deal with the mamas and the papas and the sisters and the babies' mamas all the time. So we are not going to go down that road of incredible ridiculous, but what we need to do is to be supporting. And I have to say to you, and I'm done in about 1 minute, sir, I have to say to you that when you went through all that ridiculous, dealing with the air condition, nobody never told the whole story up front, that we had already budgeted that a year prior. You had already ordered the equipment to go in. You were preparing and had bids out for the plumbing. Common sense tells anybody that within 2 or 3 weeks, you couldn't have possibly done all that and had air conditioning in. You would have had already been working on it, but nobody wants to talk about the whole truth. So at the end of the day, we have got to start putting support to systems, not always criminalizing unnecessarily so. And when you talk about all these commissions, at the end of the day, you will have people who are sitting outside of the system, people who have no knowledge or real experience, and a 4, 5, or 6 hour class is not going to give it to them. But what you need is to have support and to have the resources that you need to make that system even better, because you already have the professionalism, you already have the will and the desire. And so all I can say is thank you for what you guys have already done, but at the end of the day, putting more money to this commission is not going to help, because the state has got that. The state knows what they're doing, and the state watches you more than we could ever watch you. And I'm just going to say thank you one more time, because that's not an easy job. It is not an easy job, but it could be even easier if all of us did what we could do to make sure that it's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe that completes all the questions from members of the committee. So will you still be around?
Yes, and I'd just like to make one other statement. You know, what's interesting to me, I guess I'm going to take some blame for not keeping this committee informed of the various things we did.
Toot your horn.
You know, the Division of Corrections has been contacted by other states to ask what we did and how we did it, so that they can duplicate it. I've gotten calls from California, Tennessee, New York. Bill Gates' organization, the vice president and several others came to interview me and my staff and wanted to know about some of our programs so they could apply it to their poverty initiative. And they keep asking me, what's next? So there are some things that I haven't shared with this committee, but to be honest with you, I didn't think anybody was interested. So now that I know that you are, I'll keep you apprised. And come and see. I'll send you invitations. Come and see what we're doing. You'll be proud of what we are. I welcome a committee to come and check us at any time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have the sponsor say we will hold it, as you said, and just a few closing words for today. And
I'll keep it close. So 8, 9, 10 months ago, we found that there's a booklet or a list of everything going on that goes over to the Public Safety Committee, goes to the, not the committee, but to department, with a promise that, I didn't know you guys wanted that, but we're going to get it to you. How many have you gotten?
I've gotten them.
You're getting them every month? Okay, and I thought it would be shared amongst all of us. Okay, because I haven't seen that.
You have not.
Okay, and I'm going to bring this back, I'm going to hold it, but I am going to just add in about the training, and then bring it back just the way it is, because I honestly believe if we don't start looking into the different problems, and we start seeing how things go, we're not going to be able to make the necessary changes to help the mentally ill that are in there. That's why a lot of these people have that kind of a background. This isn't to try to beat up the jail. This isn't try to beat up Dale Glass. It's a way of finding out how do we help people. They did this, and this is basically out of New York. They've done it there, and crime has come down. it's a way of looking at how do we move the system forward. And with that, I know so I'll bring it back next week or the week
Absolutely.
after, as soon as I get a chance to make that one change.
Okay.
Say something, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Vaccaro. I think it's important to make some changes with the support and the help of the commissioner. I think he brought up several recommendations, not just one, and it would just really help the bill out.
Well, the one I absolutely agree with, that there should be some sort of training so that people can get in and out of there freely to look at stuff without notification. I agree with that one. And we'll sit down and talk to them. A lot of those are minimum standards that already exist, so it shouldn't matter. And I still think that when we choose to investigate ourselves, that, that's just not right.
Okay.
But my goal is to not, to try to help people from going there in the first place. And if mental health is one of the big things, we can help ourselves by doing more. I know they say the medical stuff's 24/7. It's not.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were clear that we
Yeah,
wanted
no,
you to work with the commissioner on making the bill a palatable bill that everybody can support.
Right, and I'm going to sit down with our attorney and talk to Dale Glass
Okay.
about what he envisions in that training program. That I agree with that.
Okay, thanks, Alderman.
Alderman Cone?
I'm just going to, as a follow-up to Alderman Boyd, I just want to be clear that I think that this is a good idea. I do think that, to Alderman Boyd's point, there's a lot of recommendations from the commissioner that were very valid and good suggestions. My concern, I'll reiterate it again, and I think I've heard it from a few other committee members, there should be staffing with this commission. If this is going to get passed out, I don't think I could vote for it without some level of staffing associated with the commission, because as I mentioned before, CREA and the COB both have staffing associated with them, to help the commission do its job.
And in the case of CREA, because I sit on that, I'm simply been trying to get an attorney for there, which seems to be some massive fight.
Well,
Because what we actually need is some sort of an attorney that works with CREA, that works with this commission, that can help.
but as someone who has been familiar with CREA, as an LGBT person, the city is the only entity in the state, from a local perspective that protects LGBT persons. And when a few years ago, we went down to a kind of a position where CREA was not going to have a lot of staff do the investigative work. They were going to rely upon the commission members to do the investigative work. And it's an all-volunteer commission, just as you're suggesting here. Those complaints went almost absolutely nowhere.
Well,
And so we put ourselves in a position where, there were housing discrimination issues that weren't getting investigated. We have the commission, we have the complaints coming in, but there were no resolutions being made, to those complaints, or at least not in a very timely manner.
There still
And
isn't.
so I think, you're chair of legislation, you sit on the CREA commission, so you're familiar with that. So if you're familiar with that, then I would think that you would be supportive of wanting to put staff towards this commission, because you understand then that when you have a commission that isn't staffed, there's very little work that they're able to do.
What needs to happen?
It doesn't matter if they have an attorney on it, it doesn't matter if they have a social worker on it, it doesn't matter, they may have the expertise and knowledge and skill set, but they need help in order to do the functions of their
But
role
CREA
as a
has a
commissioner.
staff, and we're still not getting anywhere. They need an attorney.
They're
And then
short-staffed.
Senate Bill 43 is going to even make it harder for CREA.
Agreed.
Because it's going to take away most of their funding. So basically, if we don't have
CREA is
a way of doing.
short-staffed, and it's not able to do their job.
Right,
Okay.
and so, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but we have to have a start, and we have to have a start, and I'm really begging for, even on this one, I would have preferred an attorney at least be there to help with some of these issues, and I'm literally begging for CREA to have an attorney, but Charles Bryson said we don't need one, and I disagree with that. I mean, right now, we have redlining going on in the city. There's a lot of reasons we need an attorney. Everything that I've seen at CREA so far has just been, you know, it's not going as far as I would like to see it.
Did that complete your statement?
I'm
was
sorry.
my only
Okay.
statement. I
All right,
appreciate
then.
it. Thank you.
All right, then.
Is that?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're holding the bill. And if you, I'll speak with you. There's no other items on the agenda, then our meeting's adjourned.